Hey there, this is Ryan Kingslien, founder of ZBrushWorkshops and the brand new CreatureWorkshops.com. I want to give you a little information about a brand new workshop that we've added to ZBrushWorkshops. It's part of the whole introduction to ZBrush for R2. So how do you create some sort of skin material, some sort of skin rendering system inside of ZBrush with all these brand new tools that we have, and at the same time kind of learn in-depthly what they're all about. That's what I tackled with this new workshop that we've added. And you can see here the model is lit really strongly, kind of with a backlight off to the left. The main light is coming in from the right. So we've got the main light here. We've got a fill light coming in from down there. We've got our rim light, which is really creeping over the side, coming off to the left. And we've got a couple of fill lights here and there. But what we've really done is just walk through the process of setting this entire thing up. So let's unpack this a little bit. Let's go back in time to an earlier version. Let's just save this one that we've got here. So the story begins with a light cap, and we're setting up and establishing the basic lighting behavior. That's the first step, and we've just got a basic material selected here. So all of this lighting information is just transferring right to the basic material, being overriding the light. In fact, our light up here is set very low, 0.01. And we're best preview rendering this just to see what we're getting. So again, the key thing here is I'm just setting up lighting information, and we are using a basic setup. We have a main light coming from above, and then we have a fill light coming in from below. And each one of these, the settings are established. The main light is going to have kind of a broad aperture, about 110, although we later increase that to 170. And then we just work our way around the model. One of the next things that you see me do in this workshop is I create a light that later becomes our specular light. And so this light is going to match up real close with our first light, only we're going to go into it, lower the aperture, establish an alpha. We're going to tile that alpha, and then lower that aperture even further. I think it eventually ended up somewhere around 33 or something like that. And the strength goes a little higher. So you can kind of see it. This is actually giving us a little bit of specularity. But there's a trick to making this specularity work like specularity. Right now everything is being done in the diffuse, you can call it a diffuse channel for the light. What about this little specular guy here? How do you get this specular to work so that specularity here is then being related to the specular curve, not really the specular curve, sorry, the specular intensity in the material? That's a nice little trick we cover because it's not exactly obvious. So we go in here and we add all of these lights. We also add another light that becomes a really strong, powerful side light. Let's go in and say increasing, I think the strength went up to 4.5. And this is going to be our rim light, so we're really pushing it off to the side. And I'm giving you pretty much the entire setup right now for the lights. We also establish an alpha for that. Make that really strong, give that a nice clean edge, and then adjust the aperture to start to limit the effect of that light. Aperture affects the size. But notice that we're getting some specularity right here. So I start out and I keep this, and all the way until the very end we leave the specularity off. That's when I show you the nice little trick. But let's best preview render this. And let's say that this light is our final lighting setup. Once you've got the final lighting setup established, then the next task that you have is to go in and start to create the look of the model, basically, look of skin. And how do you create the look of skin? So if you were to use the traditional setup of ZBrush lights, materials, things like that, you might go into diffuse curve. Those would be my first things. I would go into diffuse curve, and I would go into the anisotropic diffuse. And I'll just save you that trouble now. They don't connect when you're using LightCaps. So don't worry about them. You have to do something different. So in the workshop, we talk about how to use wax strength, how to adjust that so that it works. And then we've also got a little texture on this guy. So that helps. And then we basically work to convert this render, which you're about to see, into a final render. And there's a lot of things to cover. So one of the things that's really important to know, I'll give you right now, and that is that shadows can be turned off per light. So we've got a really powerful light that's acting as our rim light, and it's casting a shadow onto our model. Set that all the way to 0. Set your shadow all the way to 0 when you have that light selected. So remember, light index is your key for that. Re-render it. Okay, that'll help it look a little bit better. Let's come into our main light. Increase that strength. That's actually what we ended up doing the most. Let me set it to about 1.5. Best preview render that. Alright, and we're on our way. We've got some work to do with the specularity. And we've got some work to do with the adjustments. But I walk you through that entire process. How to set them up, how they matter, what's fall off, what's exposure, how does strength, exposure, and gamma combine? How are these features relevant to you? How does strength, exposure, gamma combine? How does that affect the diffuse channel? How does that affect a whole bunch of other stuff? So let's load in our final version here. Okay, and just in this preview mode, you can see that we've managed to take the hardness that was in the previous version and start to kind of spread the light out across the model. There's not the hard shadows off to the side here. These are getting more of a subsurface scattering effect. Okay, the hard edge for the rim light is there. That's great. But the hard shadow that was here in the side of the nose, that's gone. We've learned how to control all of those elements and start to art direct this. So let's do a best preview render. Keep in mind that with this particular one, we've got smooth normals on and detail set to 3. Also keep in mind that we have set the specularity up so that specularity is now being respected according to one or two lights that we really want to have an impact on specularity. And then if we render this out, we get a fairly decent approximation of skin, and it's a render that we can art direct. This is once you know the settings, once you know how shadows are connecting with the rest of the face, how the shadows create the form modeling, how do you remove the form modeling of shadows, how do you get into the wax modifiers to make the Fresnel, the radius, and the exponent, how do you make them all relate to each other? How do you massage them so that you're not just the cleverest monkey kind of pulling them from one point to another? And then also, what do some of these other buttons do, like temperature? Temperature is pretty cool, and I kind of like letting this temperature be at a negative because it adds this real kind of, sci-fi quality to it. The crevices inside the face of the skin, everything gets like this dark bluish hue, so it's kind of like a night picture, so to speak. So you can go either direction on that. Anyways, we cover all of that. the process of creating this entire illustration, this render, is something that we cover, and we make sure to cover wax. We make sure to cover the new shadows. We cover the new render properties. We cover specifically LightCap and how you work with that with a basic material. All of that's covered. Learn it in depth. So check it out at ZBrush Workshops. Hope you learned a little something from this preview, and good luck with your sculpting.